Okay, once again, Mamish just got in from Mincha and Ma'ariv, so we're broadcasting again back from Elm Shade Estate in South Fallsburg, New York, and our first order of business is that our Avoda Zara Daf, Nachman, is having a surgery tomorrow. Nachman Yaakov ben Sarah, he should have a refuah shalema b'seich sha'acheli Yisrael from Hashem, and we should be able to enjoy Torah with you for many, many years. Also, we're sponsored by Toiber. Yeah.
Tonight's my father's yard tag. We learned this from 2010.
And tonight is already a year, huh?
Yeah.
So tonight is the outside of David Arbach, David Ben Chaim.
Yes.
Neshama should have a lichtige Gan Eden. He should be a Meltz Yosher for his family, for all of us and all of Klal Yisrael.
Amen. Thank you so much.
So he was a very Erlich Yid. When I came to yeshiva, he was an Elta Bacher in yeshiva. When I came to yeshiva, he sat 3 seats away from me for all the years that I was in yeshiva.
Your grandfather was related to my wife's side.
I heard it. Wow. Okay.
We are sponsored by A.B. Spry for Refuah Shalema for Toiber Reiser Bas Hinda and for great zivugim for their daughter and grandchildren. We are sponsored by Shalom Fogel, Leila Nishmas, Yaakov Zeb ben Yudaya, Rivka Bas Yaakov Yosef, Tzivya Miriam Bas Gad, Yosef ben Zion ben Yaakov Zeb, and for a great shidduch for Chaya Tzivya Bas Shoshana Gittel. We're sponsored by Baruch Ian, Lili Nishmas, Yaakov Chaim ben Abba, Esther Bas Yona, Avram ben Shmuel HaKayin, and Lefuah Shalema for Liba Bas Anya. We're sponsored for the physical, spiritual, emotional protection for Yeshua Menachem Mendel ben Beila Shandel Rivka, by Eddie Chazan for safety of Klal Yisrael and the Nitzachon of the IDF and their safety, and by Menachem Yamansky for all those that are looking for a zivik should find it quickly and easily.
No, we don't see a long time Hank Wetzel.
Yeah, I don't know why. Okay, I want to say in the name of the entire shir how wonderful it is to have Reb Elia Yafi back. Mamish, it makes me so happy, Reb Elia. I hear that Reb Elia is going to be teaming up with Nachman. Is that correct? Yeah, that sounds very exciting. That's a dynamic duo. That's really good. I already feel I could welcome everybody in. We already have 30 Zoomers. That's what happens when Mark is here for the third day in a row. I mean, it's Mark Frankel has a whopping chazaka. And Marshall Castle is joining us even during vacation. I mean, it's really this is really great stuff. And Danny Vogel just comes in. Okay, so we welcome in Irving Fishbaum and Yaakov Warman, A.B. Spry, Saba, Yisrael Fisher, Dr. Guy, Eddie Chazan, Nachman Chapley, Yitzi Fuchs, Dr. Eisenberg, Barish Kesselman, Mo Kushner, Shimon Klein, Chaim Kramer, Shalom Fogel, Ruvain Shannet, Mel Zachter, Menachem Yamansky, Reb Elia Yafi, Mark Frankel, Leib Arbach, and Shelley Zeitland, Marshall Castle, Moshe Lehman, Rabbi Kranz, Ilya Shutman, Yeshua Shmuel Eisenberg, Avram Rezepkowitz, Danny Vogel, and David Helfgott just getting underway here. And tonight is, of course, a triple crown, as we will also have a chok tonight. I'm not a chok, a chumash here tonight. We are talking about the topic of Zev Goyim. The topic of Zev Goyim is one of those Shas topics, and it the idea is that something comes about from a synthesis of Isser and Heter. There's a gram of Isser, a cause of Isser, and a cause of Heter. And the question is that which is born from Isser and Heter, is it forbidden or permitted? So the opinion of Rabbi Yossi is very up for grabs. As we start, 4 lines from the bottom of Mem Ches Amud Beis. 4 lines from the bottom of Mem Ches Amud Beis. V'savar Rabbi Yossi zeh v'zeh geirim aser. Does Rabbi Yossi hold when there's a cause of Isser and a cause of Heter, it's aser? Ay, v'tanan, Rabbi Yossi aimer noitin yicher shel arla. You could plant a shoot of an arla. Arla is the first 3 years of a tree. The fruit is forbidden, but the shoot is not forbidden. So you could plant a shoot of arla, but ein noitin eger shel arla. But you can't plant a nut of arla because the nut is a fruit. Mipnei shuperi. V'amar Rabbi Yehuda amar Rav, ma'ida Rabbi Yossi. And now we're going to learn 3 halachas. Each one has a different reason. V'amar Rabbi Yehuda amar Rav, ma'ida Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi agrees. She'im nata. If you do plant the nut, v'hivrich, or you bend a vine of an arla tree into the ground, or v'hirkev, or you graft a permitted tree onto an arla tree, mutter. Now, this mutter is not all the same. He holds that if you plant a nut of arla, even though the nut of arla is asabana, the growth of the nut of arla is permitted after 3 years. Now, but why should that be? Since it's a nut from an arla tree, and it's asabana, the tree should be forbidden. So that l'chayra is a proof positive that Rabbi Yossi holds that zev v'zeh geirim is mutter. So since the nut is a gram de isser, but the ground and the rain, that's a gram de heter, so therefore what grows is not totally prohibited. Of course, it's still, you have to wait the first 3 years, because even a permitted tree is forbidden the first 3 years. Now, when you layer, that's hivrach, you take a vine from the tree and put it in the ground. When he says mutter, it means that it's mutter as soon as the parent tree becomes mutter. And hirkiv means that if you graft onto it from a permitted tree, that which goes from the graft is permitted right away. But the bottom line is the raya is from the nut, because we said if you take a nut, and Barry Cement is joining us, no coincidence that we're just talking about a nut, no coincidence at all.
Perfect timing.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol niyeh b'dvaro.
Rabbi, why you couldn't have planned that better if you tried?
Well, I could have had you come on. He always puts his foot in his mouth, always.
Got Romanian people.
So, but anyway, so from the fact that if it grows from the nut of a forbidden fruit, it's the growth is permitted after 3 years. That shows that Zegarim is mutter. B'tanya nami hachi, we learned likewise. Moeder Rabbi Yossi shem nata v'herfich v'herkav mutter. But says the Gemara, maybe Rabbi Yossi only permits it Zegarim by other isurim, but Avoda Zara, which is more chamer, by Avoda Zara, it says lo yidbak b'yodcha mu'uma min acherim, and it's kafir be'iker. Says in Rav Chitei Mashani Leila Rabbi Yossi bein shari isurim la'avodas kechavim, that there's a difference between other isurim and Avoda Zara. Says the Gemara, Mishani Leila, is there a difference? Vatanya, we learned in the Brisa, Sadash and his davla bezevel avodas kechavim, a field that's fertilized with the fertilizer of idolatry. V'chein parash and his patma, a cow that's fattened b'kashine avodas kechavim with vetch of idolatry. Tani chada, one Brisa teaches Sada Tizara, the field could be planted, and parati shachek, the cow could be slaughtered. That means that even though in the field there's a gram of Isser and a gram of Heter, the soil, the nutrients, that's Heter, the fertilizer is Isser, but it says that you could plant it. The Tanya Idach, but we learned in another Brisa, Sada Tover, you have to leave the field fallow because it has the fertilizer of Avoda Zara. Or para teraza, and the cow has to be left to become emaciated. That you don't benefit from the fattening of Avoda Zara. So my lav ha Rabbi Yaisi v'ha Rabbanan. So you see, the Rabbi Yaisi holds that zevazeh goyim is mutter. Says the Gemara, no. Lo ha Rabbi Eliezer v'ha Rabbanan. There is somebody that holds zevazeh goyim is mutter, but it doesn't mean it's Rabbi Yaisi. It's Rabbi Eliezer. Says the Gemara, what machlokes Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbanan are you referring to? Hey, Rabbi Eliezer Rabbanan, which machlokes of Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbanan? Ilema, Rabbi Eliezer Rabbanan disar. It's the Rabbi Eliezer and the Rabbanan of the sourdough. Sourdough is almost onomatopoeic. We used to translate sour as yeast, but the more accurate definition is sourdough, which causes and agitates the dough. The Tanan, Sa'or shel chulin v'shel truma. If Marshall has in Canada sourdough of chulin and truma, shenaflu l'seicha itza. Now, neither one is enough to cause the dough to rise. It's not enough. There's not enough sourdough of chulin, not enough sourdough of truma. But they combine to render it fermented. Rabbi Eliezer, now the question is, does it become truma and is it forbidden to a non-kayin? So Rabbi Eliezer, achroin aniba. We go after the one that fell in last, because the one that fell in last is what caused it to be activated. So if chulin fell in last, so then it's permitted to a non-kayin. If truma fell in last, then it's forbidden to a non-kayin. The Chacham say, Bein shenafel isser l'chatchila, bein shenafel isser l'b'sayif, whether the isser fell initially or the isser fell at the end, it makes no difference. Since there's not enough of isser in order to make it ferment, einoy aser ad she'eh bo kedei l'chametz. It would only aser if there's enough sourdough of truma to cause it to ferment. V'amar Abaya, it's only if they quickly took out the sourdough of chametz before it fermented. So, but you see over here that Rebbe Eliezer, even Rebbe Eliezer, Abaya said that according to Rebbe Eliezer, even if the chulin fell in last, it's only if you got rid of the truma before it did its job. But if not, it would be awesome. So here we see that Rabbi Eliezer holds that even though there's a zev zegorim, there's a gram of chulin, and there's a gram of truma, we say that zev zegorim is also. Says Gemara, no. Umamai the time of Rabbi Eliezer kedabaya. That would be the source that Rabbi Eliezer holds zev zegorim is also. But says the Gemara, who says that we hold like Abaya? Dilma time of Rabbi Eliezer is because he holds that the one that fell in last is responsible for the activation. Mishum da'achar achran anibah. Igamar b'yisura, if it's completed, if the amount necessary is completed with the isur, asura. V'igama b'atera mutarin. Bein silke, bein loy silkua. Whether you remove the isur, whether you don't remove it. But not that in general Rabbi Eliezer holds zev zegorim is asur. Only over here because it's the isur that activated it. Ella, if you want to know which Rabbi Eliezer holds that zev zegorim is mutter, right? Because that's what we're saying, that the author that says that the nut that you put in together with the nutrients, it'll be permitted after 3 years. It's Rabbi Eliezer is the one that says that it's aser, and the Rabbanan are the ones that say it's mutter. Is the Rabbi Eliezer and the Rabbanan of Eitzim. Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbanan of the case of the wood, the Tanan. If you take wood from a Asherah, Notol Heimena Eitzim Asur B'Hana. If you took wood from an Asherah, it's Asur B'Hana. Hisik Ba'esatana. If you then fired up an oven with that wood, so Chodesh, if it's a brand new oven, now a brand new oven, the first time you fire it up, completes the oven and strengthens it. So if you fired it up with wood of Avoda Zara, so that means you completed it with wood of Avoda Zara, yutatz, you have to break the oven. Yoshan yutzan. If it's an old oven, then you have to cool it down. Now let's say you didn't cool it down, you fueled it up with wood of Avoda Zara, off a bayas apas, and you baked in it bread. So the fuel is a gram of isser. The oven, which contains the heat and helps to bake it, is a gram of heter. So the Tanakama says asura b'hana, the bread is asur. Nis'arva b'acherim, if it mixes with other breads, kulan asur is b'hana. Rebbe Eliezer says that it is also b'hana, but you don't have to throw away the bread. You don't have to destroy the bread. You could take the value of the bread and throw it in Yam HaMelech, and then the bread is permitted. Rebbe Eliezer yoylech hano Yam HaMelech. You take the benefit, the value, and throw it in the salt sea. Over there it corrodes. And then the bread is mutter. Amrullah, they said to him, Ein paidim l'avodas kachab. Now here, both opinions hold that zev zegorim is asur. Rebbe Eliezer holds zev zegorim is asur. Just he says that there's pidyon. And the Rabbanan holds zev zegorim is asur. So the Rabbanan that say zev zegorim is mutter, which Rabbanim is that? Rabbanan the pligi alei the Rebbe Eliezer maninu. Ilaim Rabbanim the eitzim, the Rabbanan over here of the case of the wood, to the contrary. They hold the bread is asur and you can't even redeem it. Achmurei machmurei. Ella, it's the Rabbanan the Sar. It's the Rabbanan that hold that if you have sourdough of truma and sourdough of chulin, it's permitted to a non-kohen, because zev zegarim is mutter. Says the Gemara, well, maybe they're only makel by truma. Maybe they're not makel by avodah zara. Says the Gemara, "Eimer hasham sul rabbanan de mekile b'sar, ba'avodas kechavim mi mekile." How do we know that they're makel even by idolatry? Ela la'olam ha-Rab Yaisi v'ha-Rabbanan. Rab Yaisi holds zev zegarim is mutter. But in our Mishnah, Rab Yaisi says that you can't put vegetables under an idolatrous tree even in the winter because the foliage falls on it. Now the problem of the foliage is it's fertilizer, but that's zev zegarim. Is the foliage which comes from an idolatrous tree is aser, but the earth is mutter. So if Rabbi Yaisi has a problem with the foliage, then that means he holds zev zegarim is aser. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Yaisi l'divrayim d'Rabbanan. Rabbi Yaisi was only playing devil's advocate. Amalu l'didi, the foliage would not be a problem because zev zegarim mutter. But l'didchu, Damri says zev zegarim aser, you shouldn't be able to put vegetables even under an idolatrous tree, even in the winter, because of the foliage. Since the foliage would be a problem of fertilizer. The Rabbanan say, like we talked about yesterday, they say any benefit that you get from the foliage is canceled out by the fact that the tree blocks the necessary sun in the winter. Kedamar Rav Mari Braid Rav Kahana Amar Rav Yehuda Mishmol. Rabbanan Kedamar Rav Mari Braid Rav Kahana. Like Rav Mari said in the name of Rav Kahana, that it's not forbidden because any benefit that you gain from the foliage being fertilizer is canceled out by the tree blocking the necessary sunlight which is needed. So overall, you're not benefiting anything from the item. I'm Rabbi Yehuda Mashmul, Halacha Rabbi Yaisi, the law is like Rabbi Yaisi, that we say that zev zegarim is mutter even by idolatry. Now, to give an example of this, nothing like a Maisa Rav, wow, it's like 31 Zumers. What a wonderful thing. We're all learning to be Mekayim, the mitzvah of V'dibarta Bam, La'asris Nachas Ruach Liyotzreinu. So, Ha'u Ginza, now this is a garden in Bela Kinwood. Now, if you don't know where Bela Kinwood is, it's in the place where Mark lives. So, Ha'u Ginza, it was fertilized with zevel of idolatry. Now, we know what the answer is. Since we paskin like Rabbi Yaisi, that zev zegarim is mutter, so it's going to be mutter. And that's what the Gemara says. Shalach Rav Amram kamei de Rav Yosef. Rav Amram sent a question to Rav Yosef. What's the din? Amalei hachi amar Rabbi Yehuda. So says Rabbi Yehuda. Amar Shmuel halach Rabbi Yaisi. That zev zegarim even by Avoda Zara is mutter, and therefore the Bela Kinwood field is going to be permitted. And Mark sighs a deep sigh of relief. Now, as we turn to Mem Tesamid Beis, Shir, the Oil will know how excited I am when they come back to this Shir. Rebellia, it's so great to have you. I think Rebellia is heading soon for a bar mitzvah to Chicago, so it should be with Atzlach and Mazel.
Oh, man.
Now, Now this is a chazara. We just learned this Mishnah. Not only mena eitzim, if you took wood from an idolatrous tree, asur bana, hisik ben esadaner, if you fired up an oven, im chadash, if you fired up a new oven with this rana, since the first time you fire it up, it strengthens and completes. Yutatz, you have to shatter the oven. Vim yoshan, if it's an old oven, so then yutzan, you just cool it down. Ofa bayas apas, if you bake bread in it, asur bana. Now we know that this Mishnah is shaloi kehilchasa, because the author of our Mishnah that says that if you bake bread in it, so that's zevazeh garim. There's the garim of the fuel and the garim, the heter of the oven. So we would hold that it's mutter because we hold like Rabbi Yossi. But the Tana of our Mishnah holds that zevazeh garim is aser. So the bread becomes aser b'ana. This arva b'acheres, if challah got mixed up with other permitted challahs, kulan asuras b'ana. They're all forbidden. Rebbe Eliezer says, well, if it gets mixed up, there is a way to save the whole batch. You say that the challah, that's Avoda Zara, is worth $5.89. You take $5.89 and you throw it into Yam HaMelech. Rebbe Eliezer Aimer Yoylech Hanol Yam HaMelech. Amrullah, they said to him, there's no pidyon. There's pidyon by Hekdesh. There's no pidyon by Avoda Zara. Amrullah ain't pidyon Avodas Kechavim. There's no redemption by idolatry. Now, the Mishnah says another case with the same idea. Not only men a karker, if you took and fashioned from a tree of Avoda Zara a pick for weaving, not for a guitar, a pick for weaving. This was, remember, the warp thread was laid out on the loom, and you had to introduce the erev, the woof thread, into the warp thread, up and down, up and down, up and down. The threads needed to be evenly distanced from one another. So they separated the warp threads using this pick. Now, if the pick was taken from a tree of Avoda Zara, Orag bayas habeged, if you wove with it a beged, asabana, that beged becomes asabana. Nisar b'acherim, 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 if it gets mixed up with other begadim, and those begadim get mixed up with other begadim, kula nasurim b'ana. Rebbe Eliezer, I mean, no, you don't have to throw away all the begadim. The value of the beged Avoda Zara was $69.99. So Yoylech Hanol Yam HaMelech, you could put the $69.99 into the Red Sea, into the Salt Sea. Amrullah ain't paying l'avodas kechavim. Now the question is, why do they have to argue with the idolatrous tree, and why do they have to argue with the pick of Avoda Zara? With tzricha. The Ashmin and Kamaisa, the first case where you used wood as fuel to bake the bread, there Rebbe Eliezer is lenient with pidyon, with redemption. B'hakama Rebbe Eliezer, you know why? Because the bread is being baked after the idolatry is destroyed. Because since it's used as fuel, it's destroyed. Mishum de be'idna de kagamra pas, when the bread is completed, kali lo yisura, the idolatrous wood is gone. Aval karka, but the pick, the isei lo yisura b'einei, it's still intact. Eima maida l'rabbanan, that there's no leniency of pidyon. V'yashmin and kirker b'hakam l'rabbanan, that they don't allow pidyon because the Avoda Zara is intact. Aval pas eima maida l'Rebbe Eliezer, because the Avoda Zara is destroyed. Tzricha, they have to argue in both cases. Amar Rab Chia b'rei Rabba bar Nachmeni, Amar Rav Chisda, Amar Zeiri, halacha k'Rebbe Eliezer. The law is that there is pidyon by Avodas Kechavim. Ikid Amrei, Amar Rav Chisda, Amali Abba Bar Rav Chisda, Hachi Amar Zeiri, Alach, Kereb Eliezer. Amar Avoda Bar Ava, Lo Shanu Elapas. This is only true in the case of the bread. Because as we said, in the case of the bread, the Avoda Zara is destroyed already because the fuel is destroyed. Aval chavius loy. But in the case, if you had a jug of yayin nesach and it got mixed up with 50 jugs of yayin nesach, you can't be paid to the jug of yayin nesach because there you're being paid to mamish Avoda Zara. Rav Chisda says you could be paid to afilu chavius muteris. How gavra? Now, whenever it says Ahu Gavra, we know that it's Barry. Right? So Ahu Gavra, this Arav Lechavita the Yayin Nesech B'chamrei. 1 barrel of Yayin Nesech got mixed up with his wine. Now that's going to answer all his wine, and Barry needs that wine. Barry's a mellow guy. Also, the commentary of Chisda, Omar, he says a barrel is worth 4 zuz. Shkol arba zuzei v'shodei benara. Take 4 zuz and throw it in the river. That way you redeem the barrel of Avoda Zara wherever it is. V'nishtrei lach. And then the whole batch is permitted for you. Now, new Mishnah. The night is young yet, Rabbi say. Ketzad mevatla. How do you go about being mevatel an idolatrous tree? Kersem. If the guy, remember, Jew can't be mevatel, but a guy, if the guy prunes some wood from it for his fireplace, or vizerid, or he takes some live vines from it to munch on, not to mimena makel, if he breaks off from it a stick, or sharvit, or a twig, afilu olo, or even if he uses a leaf to wipe his hands on, harizeh butler, he has nullified the tree. Shifa, if he scrapes it, Litzarka, if he scrapes it, that it should look nicer than Asur, it still is Asur. Shaloi Litzarka, if he scrapes it to use the chips, he wants to use the chips for his poker game, Muteris, then it's Muter. Now what about those chips? Oisen Shvoin Mate Aleh. What's the din with those chips? Pligiba Rafuna V'chia. Rafuna V'chia Barav argue about it. Chadam are asurin, the chips are asur, v'chadam are mutar. So the Gemara says, Tanya Kaman Yama mutar. The Tanya, Ovid Kechavim, Sheshifa Avodas Kechavim. A Ovid Kechavim, a guy that scrapes the Avoda Zara, Litzarachai, because he wants to use the shavings as fuel, he ushva'er mutar. Both it, the tree itself, because he was mavatal it, and the chips are mutar. Litzarcha, if he's shaving it, that it should look nicer, so he asur, the tree itself remains asur, but ushva'er mutar, but the scrapings are mutar. Now a yid who can't be mavatal an idol, v'yisrael sheshifa avodas kavim bein litzarcha, whether if he did it to make it nicer, bein litzarcha, or even if he did it because he wanted to use the chips for fuel, he ushva'eh asur, and everything is asur because he can't be mavatal an Avoda Zara. Now, this is a subject that we debated already before. Itmar. Avodas kechavim shenishtabra me'eleha. An idol that broke on its own. Now, the argument is that if it broke on its own, nobody nullified it. On the other hand, we said that the guy gives up on it because if it can't protect itself, it can't protect him. So, Rav Amar Tzarech Levatel Kol Kisim V'Kisim. Rav says, when it breaks, they worship the pieces. And therefore, then you have to be vatal every piece. V'Shmuel Amar no, Avodas Kechavim Eina B'Teila Ela Derech Kedei Lasa. Now, what this sounds like it means is that Avoda Zara is not nullified unless it falls up off in the way of growth, like leaves from a tree. So the Gemara says just the opposite. If it's the way of growth, then that's not nullification. Adarabah, derech kedei lasa mimavatla, that doesn't nullify it. Elahachi kamer. Ein avodas kechavim tzricha levatel. Once it breaks, you don't have to nullify it because the guy nullifies it in its mind because it can't even take care of itself. Ela derech kedei lasa, unless it's in its normal growth, like the leaves of a tree. There, that's not nullification. So the Gemara says, Leima b'haka miflagi. This question about if it breaks on its own, whether it's asur or mutter, the Mar Saba oivdin l'shvarim. One says if it breaks, they worship the pieces. Or Mar Saba ein oivdin l'shvarim. So the Gemara says, no. Loi de kuli alma oivdin l'shvarim. If it breaks, they worship the pieces too, and then you have to nullify each piece. But what if the pieces break? V'hacha b'shvarei shivrei shvarim kamiflagi. Ma'asava even shivrei shvarim asurin, even the pieces of pieces are awesome. Or ma'asava shivrei, that's already too far. If the pieces break into pieces, the guy says, it's a loser. Matarim. Viba is saying, pieces into pieces, for sure that's nullified. Viba is saying, the kuli alma shivrei shvar mutar. But here we're talking about where you had an Avoda Zara that was made out of pieces. It was a Lego Avoda Zara. Yeah, Bruce goes to Legoland and he finds an Avoda Zara. It was a Lego Avoda Zara. Where it has put together parts. And it could be put together even by a non-artisan, even by a non-profession. If it falls apart even to the extent of shivrei shvarim, it falls apart into very little pieces, loy batla. It's not nullified because it's reassembled. It's reassembled easy. Omar saver ein avodas kechavim b'teila. Let me check the gears over here. Right. Ein avodas kechavim b'teila. The avodas kechavim doesn't need to be nullified. Ela derech kedei lasa, when it breaks in the normal way, like leaves falling off a tree. So then it remains an Avoda Zara because that's normal. That's not considered nullified. Dainu urche, holav gedei lasahi, but if it's not normal, like this collapsible Avoda Zara, it's not normal for it to fall apart. So there, where it falls apart into such small pieces, then ve'ein tzricha levatel. It doesn't need to be nullified. It's nullified on its own. Hadrin alach kalat slamim, hadrin alach kalat slamim, hadrin alach kalat slamim. Okay, we're going to stop here because we're going to march right into, we're not passing go, we're not collecting $200. We're going to march right into a delicious chumash here. And